Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's marketing masterclass. It's another one in the series that we've been running over the past year or so. And today we're going to take a deep dive into the code for construction product information. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. All attendees' microphones are muted. If you've got any questions, please just drop these into the chat or the Q&A, and we'll follow these up after the webinar. We do respond to every question individually, so if you do have anything that you want to know, please just ask and we will get back to you. If you want to find out any more about MBS, once you've seen the webinar today, you can visit the mbs.com where there's a load of helpful things such as knowledge articles. There's bits on the CCPI there as well. Or drop us an email at info@thembs.com and somebody would be more than happy to have a chat with you. Your speakers for today are myself. My name's Lee Jones. I'm the head of manufacturer solutions at MBS. Been with the company for about 3.5 years now, but spent the prior 2 decades in the construction product manufacturing sector. So a lot of what the CCPI is trying to do, obviously felt some of the pain points that it's trying to address. And alongside me is Catherine Fyfe. Now, Catherine is the Divisional Marketing Director at Polpypipe, but is also the Deputy Chair of the Construction Product Association's Marketing Integrity Group. Catherine's instrumental in the delivery of the CCPI, so we're going to get some great first-hand knowledge from that. So just a little about who MBS are for anybody that might be new to us. MBS are part of Big Factor Group, who are a technology firm based in Sweden. Big Factor actually have businesses all around the world. We've just got a snapshot of the European entities there. Some you might recognize in the UK, one being MBS, which is us, and obviously Glenigan, the Project Insights business that's our sister company. There's also entities in Australia, Canada, the majority of the Asian territories, and the whole Pacific area around there as well. So yeah, we're trying to make the construction property information sector more connected, and the tools that we're doing seem to be doing a great job of that. MBS specifically, historically, we are a national building specification. So the organization's provided the clauses and templates to the industry for the past 5 decades to write written specifications for buildings. Today, our cloud-based solutions, MBS Chorus in particular, allow the specifiers to actually write those specs. So it's the software that they use to do it. Mixture of architectural practices, contractors, consultants, anybody that needs to be involved in the written specification throughout the project timeline would use our tools. And then through MBS Source, we have thousands of manufacturers that actually host their product information through us. So the CCPI is quite integral to what we're doing. And I'll touch a little bit more on that later on. But effectively, our customers are your customers. And through the 2 platforms, Chorus and Source, we can actually connect manufacturers to those specifiers and get the products in the specification. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to look initially at what the background was behind the need for the code for construction product information. Obviously, this isn't something that's just been produced out of thin air. There was a lot of reasoning behind it. We're going to give you an introduction to the code, and at that point, we'll have an interview with Catherine Fyfe. And we'll go through what the code is, what it entails, and all the relevant questions that you might need to know or that you're curious about regarding the code. We're then going to look at how the code can improve your marketing activity. A lot of this is around structured information and making specifications and selections of products and systems more robust in the industry. But obviously that impacts marketing because it's how you display your products and how you surface that information to your customers. So there's a lot that's connected there. And then on that same vein, obviously MBS provide a solution for the manufacturing community to actually provide their information to specifiers. So we're going to give you a deep dive as to how Mbs align to the code as well. So a little bit of background. The Construction Products Association's Marketing Integrity Group was set up in 2018. Obviously, there had been a lot of media coverage and there was a lot going on in government around lack of information or lack of trust of information in the industry when it came to selecting construction products. So the group was put together and started to do the research and the networking, etc., to understand where things were and what needed to be changed. So 12 months later, there was a call for evidence put out to the industry. Now, the CPA actually commissioned MBS to work with them on this. So it was a joint venture, and we went out with what was known as the Construction Product Information Survey. This had 524 individual responses, a mixture of different knowledge areas from around the sector, from design, construction, manufacturing. This is still available to download today from the CPA website. So if you just Google Construction Product Information Survey, CPA, or something along those lines, the link will come up, but visit the CPA site if not, and you'll be able to navigate through the list to get to it. This was a very concise set of information, and one of the great things about it was that the questions were asked to both the specifiers and the providers of the information. So we provided a really clear view of what the views were from the specification community, but what the same views were from the manufacturing community, in particular around things like the quality of information, or how easy information was to be received. The specifiers might find that slightly difficult, but the manufacturers thought that they may be doing a good job of it. There's a lot of detail in there, so it makes great reading. If you want to take a look into that, some of the insights are very sort of reflective of why the CCPI was required. The respondents themselves was pretty much half and half. So 45% of the responses were from the providers of product information. So that's your manufacturers, your vendors, your merchants, that kind of thing. And 55% of the responses were from the specification community. So we're looking here at architects, designers, consultants, technologists, contractors, that kind of thing. So it was a really good indication of what was going on. That then set the scene of where any specific gaps were, or where there were maybe shortfallings in the industry, and how information was being provided and received. And that led to some key statistics. The first one to note, really, that we can see here on the screen was that the survey suggested that there was a strong support for the introduction of a minimum competence level for those involved in establishing the performance criteria products, specifying name products, and for proposing and proving alternative products for substitution. We hear quite a lot about the value engineering process, but it isn't always clear that if a product's being substituted, does it actually meet the same requirements as what was originally specified? So there was a lot of competency increase required around that. And secondly, there was obviously great support through the responses for an industry code of conduct to ensure that the information that was being provided was as accurate and as concise and structured as it possibly could be. So we're just going to take a quick look now as to where that information is used. So for a lot of manufacturers, stage 4 of the REBA planner work seems to be where a lot of focus gets placed, which is the technical design stage, and quite rightly so. It's obviously where the final written specification is completed. It's the last stage before construction, so for manufacturers it's critical that they're in specifications at that particular point to ensure that they go through to the procurement phase. However, that same data is used by the specifiers throughout the whole timeline. So if we look at starting at the sort of concept stage, so what we've got here is our specification marketing cycle. We have a document on this on the mbs.com if you want to download it. It's free to download. It provides some good insight as to where information is used throughout the cycle. But at the concept stage, this is really about awareness of what's going on in the industry, what's changing, what product systems are out there. And this is where tools like MBS Source can come into play, where a specifier can go and look for multiple different product systems, materials in one place and do a bit of research. But in the case of architects in particular, CPD is pretty crucial here. So architects have to conduct 35 hours minimum of CPD to gain a minimum of 100 points to remain chartered. Most of these CPDs will be selected based on projects that the specifiers will be working on. So if there's an area of knowledge that they need to understand, booking in a CPD with a manufacturer, for example, at that particular point to learn about that is quite key. But ultimately, this specifies technical information. It might not necessarily be product specific because CPDs tend to be quite generic. But again, it's how that information is communicated. Then moving into stage 2, so interest starts to peak a bit there as the building fabric, etc., starts to become more evolved. This is where they might be looking at the manufacturer's websites. Obviously, there's a lot of emphasis on digital now. The code itself will cover analog as well as digital, but there is a big emphasis on digital to make sure that in today's world, where most people just go and do a quick Google of something or pick up the phone and do a little search when they're looking for products, whether it's in your own personal life or in your working life, digital is where we do these things now. So making sure that the manufacturer's websites are there and containing the information, but then also, again, third-party tools like MBS Source and making sure they contain all the literature that people can do and review. Stage 3, so spatial coordination, the products start to become more selected there. This is where a lot more of things like the regulations start to get considered. So this might be spatial planning, for example, making sure that if products are used, the dimensions are provided accurately to make sure that they're meeting Part M of the building regulations and so forth, energy efficiency. But there's a lot that needs to be considered, and obviously fire safety is right up there with those as well. At this particular point, the specification starts to become more developed, and this is where tools like MBS Chorus come in. MBS Chorus is, as I mentioned in the earlier slides, where the specifiers will write the specification. Source is directly linked to that. So for anybody that's listing the products in Source, it will actually allow those to be pulled straight through into the specification in Chorus. And then stage 4, final stage before construction and procurement. So this is where the technical specification is outlined. It's sort of the end game for the specifier to get that complete, and making sure that all that information is available from the manufacturer to allow them to complete those clauses is absolutely paramount. Then going into stage 5, so construction and procurement. Again, specifications used very, very much so there to do that. And again, it's totally reliant on the manufacturer's product information to make sure that the actual systems and materials that are being put together within the building are as fit for purpose as they should be. And then later down the line, this can also then be reused for re-engagement CRM. So going into the in-use phase, facilities management itself can benefit quite heavily from this. So hopefully that's give you a bit of a background as to where the need to build the code for construction product information came from. If anyone has any questions, by all means, just drop us a note, and then hopefully the specification marketing cycles just give you a good indication of the fact that that information isn't just used in one particular area. It's a very broad requirement. So this is why it's so crucial. So that all resulted in the code. So now joining me is Catherine Fyfe from the CPA's Marketing Integrity Group, and we're going to discuss this more. So joining me now is Catherine Fyfe. Catherine, nice to have you on board. I think instead of me introducing you, do you want to introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you very much for asking us to come on and provide a bit of an update on the Ccpi. Always good to talk about it. So my name is Catherine Fyfe. Kind of my involvement with the Ccpi per se was working with the CPA and kind of co-chairing the Marketing Integrity Group, responsible for creating and bringing about the code for construction product information. My background is in marketing and product management. I have spent many years working for construction product manufacturers, and yeah, so was really keen to get involved in this initiative and really pleased with kind of where we are today.
Excellent. Thanks. So the Ccpi, obviously the webinar is about this, but I think it'd probably be prudent to start with what it is. Have you got a sort of a description what this Ccpi describe the code as?
The Ccpi, or Code for Construction Product Information, is really about helping organisations drive higher standards in the way that they present construction product information, and ultimately it's about prioritising building safety. The code itself is made up of 11 clauses. Again, you can see that on the website, which goes into detail, and I believe more information that covers kind of the overarching codes, but also the nitty-gritty detail on the website. But basically, the codes cover a wide range of subject matters, ranging kind of the responsibility of the creation of that product information to the accuracy and clarity, really, of the performance claims made, and also around the general information, ensuring that there's the right information to make informed decisions, thinking about the stakeholders of that product information, and there's quite a big key clause that nods to competency, which obviously is a critical subject matter, which goes alongside this code. The kind of main objective, should we say, is really about, you're making a claim of your product, then you really must be able to have appropriate, clear and unambiguous evidence to be able to substantiate that claim. So that's the premise of it. And that links nicely into what we call the 5 acid tests, and that is that product information must be clear, accurate, up to date, accessible and unambiguous.
Brilliant. So no, that's great. Thanks. Obviously the aims there were quite clear, and I think the acid tests are pretty much as they say on the tin. Just alluding back to what you mentioned about some of the clauses, it seems that some are more about the organization than the information, so competency and how data is handled internally. Obviously there's some things to consider there, so it's what the businesses are doing plus how they're surfacing the data. So do you want to just maybe explain how it works, how the code works? So if I was a manufacturer and we were going to sign up to the code, how would that work?
Yeah, sure. You're right to point out that it is, part about the information of the product, but it is really critical that there's the right leadership and culture in the organization that creates and manages the product information. So the actual verification process that allude to, well, it does cover, not allude to, but it covers both of those elements. So after registering for Ccpi, which you can do on the website, you'll basically be given access to a portal, and that is the Dpi Verification Portal, where you'll enter, preliminary information about the company, and you'll effectively go straight into what is kind of a 5-step verification process.
Yeah.
Again, that 5-step verification process is available on the website, which we'll go into detail, but just as an overview, the first step really is about that culture and leadership survey. This is about making sure that all employees in your organization understand their remit around product information, and that from the top down and up again, everybody understands and is on the same page, and has the right sentiment and working practices towards product information. The second step is the kind of management system questionnaire. So that's kind of pertaining to the processes that a manufacturer would have in their organization. So if you think that this is where you can nod to quite a lot of the management processes that you may have, ISOs, etc., then you would list all of the systems and processes that you're already adhering to. The third step then is a review of everything that's been submitted, and then you'll be allocated a verifier who may then want to go and deep dive into some of this information. You'll have pull about any areas that concern or weaknesses that they may want to go into, and once that's all signed off and kind of approved, should we say, on the organizational side, you'll step into the product step side, and that really is about submitting all of the information around the product that you are putting forward for the Ccpi verification. it's probably worth mentioning at this point that, you know, you can go for a CCPI verification with just one product set in the initial phase and then add product sets going into this. So you do not need to have all of your product sets done at the same time, because for some organizations that's a huge amount of work. So you can go for one and then the other. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, yeah, one of the questions I was going to ask you was, is it based on products or is it based on the business as a whole? But I think that sort of answered the question there with that.
It's important that it captures both. You know, you've got to have the right culture in the business around product information, its creation, its management, its communication. But at the same time, you've got to evidence those claims. So that's got to go down into the product set level, really.
Excellent. I mean, my background, for anybody that might not be aware, is same as yours. It's in construction product manufacturing, but on data management. And I can imagine this will probably highlight a lot of holes that manufacturers have internally, which I think can only make them more efficient moving forward. So there's obviously more to gain than just the customer facing side of it as well there, which yeah, it can only be a bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I suppose it's not to be feared, you know, and it's also not to, you know, to be a situation where manufacturers should feel like, yeah, we're nailing it today, you know, there are going to be holes, definitely, and this is a way to self-assess where those holes are and how we can make our processes stronger, better. So yeah, I have no doubt that for many organisations, there's quite a few, you know, people behind kind of working to set up or even refine processes, but today they may not have well embedded in their organisation. But there will be some manufacturers that, you know, have got well embedded processes as well. So I think there's also an element of we can learn from each other. So talking about it, sharing, you know, ideas as to how they manage processes, how they communicate product information, can only mean that we get better together.
No, it's a really good thing. I think one of the things I've picked out from me explaining my background and some of the conversations that we've had with you is the word manufacturers has been used a lot. Is the code just for manufacturers, or does it cover anyone else? I don't know, merchants or vendors of products, for example.
Yeah, so at it in its form today, it's for manufacturers. And it's worth highlighting that, you know, we need to have a look at the term, how we define manufacturers, because there may be some resellers out there that are, you know, importing product, putting it onto the market under their own brand, and under our definition, that constitutes a manufacturer. But, you know, outside of manufacturers, we're trying to, well, we are in the process of agreeing a separate code for distributors and merchants. Have had really good engagement, but it's so important that we, you know, we set it up for manufacturers at the beginning. That's where the information is born from, where it's created, but we need to, you know, go that step further to ensure that the ongoing communication is as robust as its creation.
Yeah, no, thanks very much. I think the next thing I wanted to sort of touch on, which I was curious about originally when we first discovered about the CCPI being sort of penciled, is a lot of this has come out of fire safety and the need to make the industry safer. Is it just intended for fire safety or safety critical products, or is it addressed for just products as a whole across the sector?
Yeah, all construction products. Really, really important that, you know, get the message that this is for all construction products. You know, yes, fire safety is absolutely, you know, critical. So structural safety, you know, we've got to think about all of the intended applications for construction products. So it's intended for all. However, you know, there is an expectation that manufacturers will prioritise their safety critical products for verification. So we anticipate that quite a few of the first waves, should we say, of products coming through this verification process will be the safety critical ones.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. I mean, I can imagine it being quite beneficial from a sustainability perspective as well. From MBS's perspective, we are getting more and more demands from the specifiers asking for information from manufacturers, and structuring it and getting it out there in a clear and ambiguous format again sits in line with this. So no, it's great. But yeah, thank you for clearing that up. Obviously, I'm assuming you get a certificate once you've reached CCPI standards as such. Is this intended to replace any existing standards that are in the industry, or is it something that's just going to run in tandem with other sort of programs?
Yeah, this is about, you will receive kind of a mark with a registered number basically for your product set, but it's not intended to replace anything. It's intended to run alongside any other certification that products may have. This is specifically for claims around your product and evidencing those claims. It's not a certificate in the sense that it's checked all of the detail behind those claims. It is, if you're making a claim that you have a certain fire rating, do you have that third-party test certificate, and are you showing that in your communications? Have we seen it, etc., etc. So yeah, it is not intended to replace, but it alongside.
Very clear, thank you. I think obviously certification, who does the verification? Is it CPI that are doing this, or is that being subbed out to a third party to do checks, validations?
Yeah, so I think we've mentioned in the past, but we're clarifying again. So CPI Limited, which is a non-for-profit organisation, has its own independent governance, has been set up to run the code, and they are the ones that are doing the verification. Their sister companies are the Building a Safer Future Charter and the Considerate Constructive Scheme, so there's shared resource there, shared expertise. So yes, that is where the verification will be housed, and obviously the economies of scale there mean that we're trying to keep to a minimum in terms of cost. Probably worth me plugging there that I know that the CPI Limited are looking for verifiers, so if anyone is interested, there's advertisements on their website, so little plug.
Okay, yep. Anybody fancies a new challenging role, take a look at that. I'm sure it'd be fascinating. On that note, obviously we now know who's doing the verification, but does the certificate last a certain amount of time, or is it for the life of the product till it's retired, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's every 2 years. It's valid for up to 2 years, and then you'll be reassessed after the 2-year period.
Great stuff. And you mentioned just not so long ago about some of the sister companies. I think it was the Building Safer Charter, etc. Is there any sort of significant backing behind the CCPI? And I don't mean sort of financially, but support from like governments, or I think one of the first things a lot of people are going to be looking at is where's the demand for this coming from, and are our supply chain going to be looking for this from us as manufacturers? So if you could give us any sort of insight onto that, would be great.
Yeah, so there is a lot of support. I don't know if anybody in the audience went to Building Safety Conference recently, but they would have heard from main contractors, from the Office for Product Safety Standards, from other procurement organisations really support the code. So there is widespread support out there, and I think there's an element of we need manufacturers to sign up and get verified, which will then in effect create more demand. We did hear at the same conference actually Insurers also say that, you know, it's a really good initiative, and
Yeah.
you know, would really like to see manufacturers come on board and reduce risk. So yeah, there's widespread support for the code.
Brilliant. I think I recall reading in the TIP 2030 roadmap, the government have heavily referenced it within that as well. So yeah, it's I don't doubt for a second that it's going to grow and become more. But the insurance thing was a great angle, actually. I hadn't considered that at all, but I suppose there's a lot of people being able to not insure certain things, or consultancy changing and different stuff with insurance since the building safety bill started going through. So no, great if it can benefit that, make things a bit easier. Brilliant. I think on that note, last thing to cover on the certification side of it is, what do the manufacturers get back from? Obviously get the recognition that's there, but do they get logos, certificates, things? How can they let their sort of supply chain know that they are CCPI compliant once they are?
Yeah, so really I think it's about lots of different things, but the mark that they receive, so the logo with the registration mark, they will be able to use on their assets. Obviously, that then signifies that they have been through this, remember, voluntary process here. So they've had verification on their processes and the evidence you know, that they're using to back up their claims. And so I think that signifies that you know, that they're not wanting to hide anything. You know, this is, they've opened the doors for that verification. Also signifies that there is a focus on that, you know, culture change, that leadership within that organisation, so that, you know, we can build more confidence. You know, we want that healthy change within organisations, and you know, those organisations believe that we need to, you know, improve safety and want to help move the industry forward in that direction. So I think that's a really powerful message, I think, to deliver. So yeah, and to get that a lot of it is going to be marketing and of the mark and the product sets within that have the mark. Use it as a way of differentiating against competition that aren't going for the mark, or potentially imported products as well that may not go for the mark. So
I think it's similar to sort of people that go for third-party verification with the performance claims on the products and stuff. It's, if something's not mandated that you must do, I think the fact that you go and then do that demonstrates that care. But I think with something like the CCPI, it's all about rebuilding maybe that trust that's been lost in the industry as well. I suppose I can see that being, with it being a voluntary scheme, it's going to help demonstrate that business, like you say, cares more than maybe than the next one if it's there. So
yeah,
that's great.
And I think also with the anticipated new regulatory requirements, you know, you are giving specifiers, clients, more assurance regarding the information that's being provided, and obviously the use of the construction products that they're collecting. So,
good stuff. I think it's worth noting, I did mean to mention earlier on, for anybody that's listening in, we will have the links to the CPI website and contact details, etc., at the end of the webinar. So we'll go through those again if you want to hear a bit more. I think moving from the certification side of things, CCPI was involved with the digital working group on it, which I was really proud to be part of that. But obviously the code itself covers information in any form, doesn't it? Analog, whether that's in catalogs or whether it is digital through your website or an app. On a sort of a personal level, I might think maybe, or a professional level, do you agree that the industry should be shifting away from analog communication methods? And if you do, or if you don't, what's the reason behind that?
I personally do, yeah.
Yep.
You know, it creates a lot more efficiency, it improves accessibility. You know, one thing that, you know, I'm quite passionate about is the single source of truth. You know, there's data is replicated in our industry, which causes havoc, in my opinion. So getting to a single source of truth is really fundamental. It helps maintain the golden thread. So yeah, I would say that it is important. It's harder for some to do than others, but we need to all move in that direction.
Yeah, sure. I think thinking back as a manufacturer, when I used to be a designer, we'd get quotations come through for requests, and specifiers had sent in specs, and there'd be loads of photocopied out-of-date catalog pages and things with products that you then have to go and check. And I think just being able to keep everything up to date, like you say, with that single source is really where digital's going to play the biggest part from ensuring people are using the right information that's relevant, and maybe not outdated. Are there any plans to expand the CCPI further? Is it going to go into different, I don't know, territories, or is it going to start to cover different aspects or cover different sort of user bases? I know we've mentioned manufacturers. Anything that you'd like to share there?
I think for the minute, we need to get people on board with what we've developed so far, and moving forward, we need to work with the distribution and merchant channels as well. So we have that to progress with, and then going back to kind of what you said earlier around digital, it needs to evolve. So we've got to recognise that not everybody's there yet with their journeys from a digital perspective. So it is what it is today, but it needs to evolve, and we need to work with industry to ensure that it is evolving. So yeah, I think there's plenty of work to do there for the minute.
Sure. I suppose for anybody that's signing up to it, the sooner they get on board with that, like say, if they're quite not advanced in their journeys, joining now is only going to help make it easier moving forward if things do get more complex. So yeah, that's great. I think sort of I've got two more questions, and then we'll let you get on with your day, and I'll move on to the other stuff. But how's the code been received by the manufacturers themselves? And I mean, obviously we've heard how the industry's looking to it, but from a manufacturing perspective, has there been a decent uptake and interest?
Yeah, we're really pleased with the interest. So we have 331 organisations that have registered their interest in the code, 200 of which are in fact manufacturers, and we've got sort of where the CCPI Limited are looking at waves of registrations, and just to be able to manage the demand coming through. So we've got 25 for the first wave, and then it's kind of scheduling the rest of those that have expressed an interest and booking in those verification timeframes. So there's been fantastic demand, fantastic interest, fantastic coverage of the code. So yeah, it's now about managing that demand and getting those organisations through the verification process.
Great. I think there's a keynote there, I suppose, for anybody that's considering signing up, is the sooner they do it, the less chance there is of being pushed into the system and having to wait. So yeah, that's great to hear that it's been so successful already. Last thing, Catherine, is there anything else you'd like to add or say before we thank you?
Yeah, I think I plugged earlier that Dpi Limited are looking for a verifier. So again, if anyone is interested, then head over to the website to register that interest. Going back to what you just mentioned, don't wait. There's quite a few organisations that have registered their interest. Like I said, verification will be done in different ways. So, if you register your interest today, it does not mean that you're going to be going through the verification process tomorrow. So, get registered. There's a lot of information that is supplied to you at the registration stage, and then you can book in your registration for later on in the year or going into next year. And then I think the final thing to say is, thank you. You've asked for an update on the CCPI, but if any other membership organisations want an update for their membership, then yeah, feel free to get in contact as well.
Thanks very much. Just before I say goodbye, we will post the contact details and the web address for the CPI website at the end of the webinar. But Catherine, do you want to tell people what it is?
Yeah.
In case anybody jumps off beforehand.
Yeah. So cpico.org.uk.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Catherine. Lovely to see you again, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. So yeah, thanks very much to Catherine for fantastic insight there into the code. If anybody wants to know more about the code, you can visit the CPI's website and find all the information that you require there, or you can drop either of us a note, and we'll be happy to pick that up. What I'd like to do now is show how Mbs aligns to the code itself for manufacturers that are Mbs customers, and actually list their products through Mbs Source and Mbs Chorus. There's a lot that you are already achieving that aligns to the code. Mbs have been sort of very critical about what our tools do and make sure that we're aligning to any sort of industry regulation or industry changes that are going on, and the code is no different. So we pride ourselves on the fact that we'll be able to deliver this for our customers, and there's a lot it can do. So we're going to go through it bit by bit. Obviously, some parts of the code don't apply. So what you do internally within your business and how you sort of monitor your information process within your business, we can't have any control over. We could give you some advice on that. But the front-facing aspects of it definitely, and that's the majority of the code itself. So the first thing that I think we align to is clause 2. So a manufacturer must have in place a formal control process for all product information. If you are an Mbs customer, what we can do is assign unique GUIDs, which you can see here at the top of the screen. So every product listing will have this unique identifier. Now, if a product becomes obsolete and it's substituted by something new or just retired, the system will actually flag this. So what you can see there is that we've got the note saying that this is an archived product. And to actually access that, the specifier needs to click that they're happy to view it and go in and see that. The idea of this is to eliminate people selecting out-of-date products or product information that's no longer current. There is the option to go and view the latest document for the latest product iteration. This could be a simple change, like they might have changed the slight material in something, or it could be that that product's completely been retired and replaced with a new one. Obviously, you want to make sure as a specifier you're using the most current information. So we facilitate that. Clause 3, a manufacturer must not use misleading or ambiguous wording, phrasing, or imagery, must embrace the use of plain English to ensure accurate representation of product information and performance claims. Mbs Source is a fully digital machine readable tool, and the information that we list is using properties and attributes. Now, what that allows it to do is communicate directly with Mbs Chorus. So when someone's writing a spec, as we can see here, this is a Windows specification for a project. They would add the relevant clauses in for the products and systems that we're doing. In this case, it's PVC window. Now, the specifier typically would have to fill in all of the clauses that we can see here on the screen. But when we select manufacturer, you can see that in the right-hand window, it actually brings in all of the products that are listed with an Mbs Source. So we'll just click on one of these ones here from Linear. And what you can see is that all of that information is structured under the relevant properties and attributes. So it's completely clear, it's unambiguous, exactly as the code's asking for. Once that information is decided that's correct, specifier can then just click the Add to Spec button. What that does is drops that product straight into the specification. If there are any options, such as the external SIL, might be a variable on this that you can pick different ones. Those are just available through the drop downs, but again, very, very clear and easy for the specifier to understand. It also makes it very efficient for them. It saves them a hell of a lot of time, but importantly, it makes those specs accurate. And moving on to clause 4. A manufacturer must provide valid and demonstrable documentation where claiming compliance to or achievement of any certification, classification, or industry standard. So what we're talking about here is the compliance to relevant British standards in most cases, or European norms. And importantly, the third-party certification that goes with those to prove that a manufacturer's products are performing in real life as they are claiming they are on the documents. So with an MBS source, it's possible for the manufacturer to list their third-party certifications. You can see with this Superglass product that they've got 4 different certificates here. Some are environmental. But if we wanted to look at the fire safety aspects, for example, you can see that Superglass are claiming that this product is category A1 against BSEN 13501 Part 1. That's then further confirmed later down within the specification clause data. So the specifier can actually pull that information into the specification directly using this. You can see it's quite clearly noted there. And then there's guidance in there as well within the grey text. Going even further though then, lower down on that page, the associated third-party certificates can be attached to that listing, so it's there nice and quick and easy for the specifier to obtain, and they can use these for keeping a log of proof of performance claims. In this particular case, it's the UCAS certification here showing that the product has been tested and does meet the relevant requirements that the manufacturer is claiming it does on their product listing. Clause 5 is very similar. A manufacturer must provide specific documentation when making any product performance claims which are outside of certification, classification, or industry standard tests. So this might be a case that a manufacturer is claiming that a product meets a certain performance declaration. It could be something that's been load tested, and it could have been load tested to 250 Newton meters or something like that. But if that's been done in-house by the manufacturer, they're not going to have any certification from a third party potentially to list that. So within those claims, as we've just seen on the prior example, the manufacturer could actually list in the guidance that this was done in-house and it's not third party verified. Just lets the specifier know, but ultimately getting third party testing is really what the specifiers are looking for, and it's something that we would encourage. Clause 6. A manufacturer must make available on their web page the descriptive and physical characteristics of the construction product. In effect, this is what MBS source does. So we can see here we've got an Ortex acoustics product. It's their quiet space roofing tile. First things first, application. Where's it suitable for? This is pretty obvious for a roofing system, but if it was something like insulation, quite often the specifier might not know, is it suitable for walls, floors, ceilings, lofts, you never know. And then making sure that all the information, particularly around the performance claims, dimensions, and any sort of physical characteristics are listed very clearly. And again, going back to that digital machine readable element, MBS sources properties, and then the attributes from the manufacturer are listed alongside those. One thing that's actually fundamental in this, and what makes it easy for the specifier, is that because of MBS's sort of 50 years experience of providing the industry with specification clauses, we have product data templates for pretty much every construction product, material, or system that you can think of. So if we were looking at an Ortex product here, or then we were looking at manufacturer B's product in comparison to it later down the line, the structure of that information would be the same. So for the specifier, being able to make comparisons is very, very easy in that sense, where sometimes if they're flipping between manufacturers' websites, the manufacturers themselves, depending on who it was that set it up, would list things slightly differently. So making that comparison can be quite complex. It's one thing that's been designed in to alleviate or at least mitigate risk of bad selection, but you can rest assured that the code's asking for it, and if you're listed in source, then it's actually doing that for you now. Clause 8, a manufacturer must publish and make easily accessible on their webpage clear product information where applicable on handling, installation, operation, maintenance, and disposal of construction products. Now, this would typically be what's covered in Euro and M manuals, for example, or installation guides. Now, within MBS source, you can actually, within your product listings or your company listings, have literature. We can see one here from Dudley. Dudley are a sanitary ware, brassware manufacturer and accessories. What we can see here is, say we were looking to install one of their soap or hand dispensers, they've actually listed the installation guides there. Very easy to do. Source is a mobile first design, so it works on any device, laptop, phone, PC, you name it. So it could be somebody's actually installing this. They could get the phone out of the pocket, quickly go and Google, download the product information, and have the installation manual there in front of them on site. Just makes it easier for people to do. Obviously, the specifier is a big consideration in getting to the procurement stage, but once that's actually been procured and been installed, there's obviously the actual contractor and the installers that you need to consider there with that information as well. Clause 9, when making any claims of guarantees and or warranties, the manufacturer's webpage must state what is covered, excluded and required to comply with its terms. The guarantee or warranty should be transparent in a format recognised by the relevant sector of industry. Again, this is something that MBS requests from the manufacturers. So what you can see here is if we scroll down, looking at this particular product on the page now, they've actually listed the warranty description there. So this product comes with a 1-year warranty, and all products have a 1-year warranty, which is backed by a nationwide customer care service. So it actually explains what's in there. There could be more added in, but for the specifier, having just 12 months written down doesn't really guarantee what it's covered. Does it cover spares? Does it cover parts, etc., and so forth? There's a lot that manufacturers could actually build in that specifiers are looking for within that. Clause 10, a manufacturer must ensure technical helpline contact details. Now this is typically telephone and or email. Obviously in today's society, a lot of people will just quickly ping an email. There does seem to be a bit of a culture of being afraid to pick the phone up unless you're of a certain age. But it's always great to have both. So visible and accessible is the key thing here, and having that on your website and easy to do. Now, there was some rule of thumbs being discussed, having a minimum of 2 clicks to find it or a minimum of 3 clicks to find the page. So hiding these within the website somewhere and making it very difficult to navigate to is not really what you want to be doing. You want to have that maybe at the bottom of the page on the contact us section where you can go to. But for any MBS source listings, we provide a means of doing this. So what we can see here is the Mbs Partner Platform. This is the back end of source. All manufacturers have access to this if they've got a source contract. And you can build a list of primary, secondary addresses and contact details on there. This is obviously a generic page. It's one that MBS set up as a dummy just to show because of GDPR when we're doing these webinars, but you can set that up for your technical helpline, you could set it up for sales, you could set it up for regional sales representatives just by creating a new address, and then obviously the primary one you sit at the top, and that will always be listed at the highest point on your webpage. Clause 11, a manufacturer must have in place a robust training program for new and existing personnel to ensure that anyone conveying product information is competent to the level of knowledge required for their role. So this goes without saying, obviously, manufacturers internally, you should be making sure that your staff are trained. This could be something as simple as knowing where information is kept and held and how to access it, etc. But importantly, making sure that they understand how that information is being used, what the requirements are from the industry for that, and how to service it, particularly if you're in the marketing side of things, where you're actually providing the display of this information. It could be that new employees come from a different industry. Obviously, they might have great marketing skills, but have recently been selling, I don't know, clothing or something like that, and then have now moved to the construction sector. There's a lot more that needs to be considered from a safety point of view. When it comes to digital, whether it's BIM or product listings, understanding what's going on in the industry, environmental, that kind of thing, MBS can provide a multitude of different sets of training programs for you. So there's nothing to demonstrate here, but if you would like to know more about MBS's training programs, please just drop us a note at thembs.com and navigate to one of the phone numbers. It's manufacturers@thembs.com for the email, or the telephone number will be on the website. This might sound all great then. Shown you how this is all surfaced through MBS Source, which to a manufacturer is a third-party hosting site. But what about your own websites? Obviously, the manufacturers will be keen to get that information on their sites and accurate as well. So through MBS Source, we've actually made it possible for you to mirror that information. So everything that's listed within source can be very quickly and easily integrated into your own website. And I'm just going to give you an example of how that works. It's not as complicated as it might sound, and it will make sure that your website is up to date. And as mentioned, this is available to anybody that has a source 2 contract upwards. So we're back in the Mbs Partner Platform, so the back end of Mbs Source. We're just going to drop down into this Resources tab. This is where you keep things like your assets, your badges, etc. If we click on the Web Integration tool, it actually brings up this desktop where you can start to configure your listings that are within source for use on your own site. So this could be by individual products, it could be by a group. Looking back at that sanitary ware manufacturer, they might have a group of wash basins and a group of pans that they could group together, or it could be for all products. You can set how the page reacts, so is it mobile first or not. Most of the time people leave it as responsive, but then you can start to amend the coloring, the fonts, the sizes of the fonts, and so forth. The whole idea around this is then you can configure these listings to match your company branding and imagery. So you will have specific fonts and colors that you'll use day to day. You can do that. If you want to see then what that looks like, you can click on a preview before anything gets used to go live and actually see what this is. Obviously, being a dummy account, this doesn't give a great feel, but we will show you exactly what it would look like from one of the manufacturers that's actually done this in a moment. So you can see there that we're scrolling down a separate page and we're seeing that information. Now, what we can see here is Cooper's Fire. Now, Cooper's Fire are one of MBS's long-standing customers, and they've actually integrated their source listings onto their web page. So for their fire curtain here, they've actually got all of that information structured. But what's even better is the Add to Spec button that's available in source that links it to the spec tool is now on their own website as well. So it could be that the specifiers come to their website and not gone through source. They've got access to all of that clear, structured, unambiguous information. It's all digital. And importantly, they can click on that Add to Spec and they can then specify from the manufacturer's site directly. Works the same for 3D content or different formats of CAD, etc., that might be listed on MBS Source. So your BIM files, your CAD files, and so forth, again, can be integrated on your website through the same functionality. So that is the demonstration. Hopefully that makes sense as to how MBS can help you align with the code. Just to wrap up and summarize then. So some key takeaways. The code for construction product information has been created to make product selection more robust and provide a means to aid safer buildings. I think that really is the key message, is that the industry needs to do a hell of a lot more in respect to safety, which is paramount, and also sustainability as well, which the code wasn't focusing on. There's something similar from the from the Competition and Markets Authority. Their Green Claims Code Guide actually reflects the CCPI quite similar as well. So in an industry where we've got to make buildings safer and we've got to make them more environmentally friendly, making sure that you're following guidelines like the CCPI can only be a benefit to you. The code sets out key requirements for manufacturers to follow. As we've just seen there when we were looking at the alignment through MBS and obviously through the conversation with Catherine Fyfe earlier on, there are key clauses with instructions as what needs to be done. Obviously, by following these, if everything's then adhered to, it's like a checklist. The requirements that they're asking for can actually improve your business's marketing activity. It's going to make the user experience in dealing with you a lot easier, which will obviously make people remember, actually, yeah, we had a great experience with that manufacturer. Let's go back to them, use them again on the next project. But also visually, etc. There's a lot that you can do around making your awareness of the fact that you're taking this seriously, and you can promote that through your social channels and so forth as well. And then lastly, MBS Source provides a great means of meeting many of the code's requirements. As mentioned, it doesn't answer all of them. Some of them are based around your internal working processes within your own organization. But certainly for the product information listing and customer facing sides, Source can actually help you a heck of a lot there with that. So if you'd like to know more about the code itself, you can visit cpicode.org.uk, which is the CPI's website, or you can follow them on Twitter at CPI Code. and there's a whole ream of information there that you can go and take a look through. And lastly, if you'd like to find out a little bit more about MBS, you can visit the mbs.com/manufacturers. You can call us on the telephone number there, or email us at manufacturers@mbs.com. We offer free consultations with one of our experts. This could be to discuss any of the topics that we've covered today, aspects that are driving changes to spec, how to best position your products, BIM, a whole host of different things. So if there's anything that you'd like to know, just feel free to drop us a note on that. I'd personally like to thank Catherine for joining us today and for giving her time and such a busy schedule to talk to you all about the code. I certainly found it very useful, so thank you very much, Catherine. And lastly, thank you all for dialing in and taking the time to sit and listen to the webinar today. We'll be back soon with another webinar. MBS are obviously got quite a clear and successful webinar program, and hopefully you've been finding these useful, and hopefully you found this one useful today as well. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.